There are weeks when history politely taps you on the shoulder. And then there are weeks when it says, by the way, we built the tallest structure in the world, redrew the map of North America, started a revolution, invented modern retail, and upset a global superpower on ice. You're welcome. February 21st through 23rd is bold. It is loud. It does not go subtle. Empires expand. Revolutions ignite. Presidents are born. And someone finally writes down 50 names in a booklet and accidentally invents the phone book. This is Dravin's Den. Before we jump into history, coming soon, the story of Charlie Curo. From Capitan Grande to the Barona Reservation, from indigenous community continuity to service in World War II in the Pacific, a radio man connected to Colonel James Doolittle's command, flying in the aftermath of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, witnessing devastation from the sky before the world fully understood what it meant. His story is not just military, though. It's about family. It's about tribal legacy. It's the decisions one generation makes so the next can grow up surrounded by community. Keep your ears peeled for that episode. You know why we study history? Because it turns out humans have been making the exact same dramatic decisions for thousands of years, just with worse lighting and fewer microphones. History is not about memorizing dates so you can win trivia night. It's about pattern recognition. It's about realizing that revolutions usually start with shortages. Wars rarely go according to plan. And every generation is absolutely convinced they are living in the most unprecedented time ever. Yeah, let's say that 5 times fast. Spoiler alert. They all thought that. If you want to understand where we are, politically, culturally, socially, you have to understand who tried this before us and how it went. Sometimes it went brilliantly. Sometimes it went terribly wrong. Usually both. So yes, we study history because ignoring it has a 100% track record of not going well. Now, the rest of history. 1885. The Washington Monument is dedicated. On February 21st, 1885, the Washington Monument was formally dedicated in Washington, District of Columbia. Construction began in 1848. Then the money ran out. Then the politics intervened. And then the Civil War happened. And then more politics happened. Imagine that. The result? It took nearly 40 years to complete. At 555 feet tall, it was the tallest structure in the world at the time. Built without modern cranes, without power tools as we know them, and without social media arguments about the design. Just stone, engineering, stubbornness, and national symbolism. 1916. The Battle of Verdun begins. German forces launched a massive offensive against French positions in Verdun during the First World War. The battle would last until December of later that year, 1916. It became one of the longest and bloodiest battles in modern history, with an estimated 700,000 casualties. Verdun became a symbol of endurance, not dramatic charges, not sweeping maneuvers, just relentless artillery, trenches, and survival. Sometimes history is not cinematic. Sometimes it's just survival measured in months. February 21st has quietly become a very Olympic kind of date. 1980, Lake Placid. Eric Hinden won the 1,500-meter skating event in Olympic record time, on his way to sweeping all 5 speed skating gold medals, an achievement still unmatched. That same day, Hanny Wenzel of Liechtenstein won women's giant slalom, making Liechtenstein the smallest nation ever to produce an Olympic champion. Tiny country, massive flex. In 1992, Albertville, Kristi Yamaguchi won the gold medal in women's figure skating, becoming the first Asian American woman to win Winter Olympic gold. 2002, Salt Lake City, Canada's women's ice hockey team defeated the United States 3-2 to win their first of 4 consecutive Olympic gold medals. In 2014 Sochi, Michaela Schifrin became the youngest Olympic slalom gold medalist at age 18. In 2018, Jessie Diggins and Kickin Randall won the first ever American gold medal in cross-country skiing in the team sprint. February 21st apparently woke up one day and said, I would like to specialize in excellence. 1878. The first telephone directory is issued. The first telephone directory was published in New Haven, Connecticut. It contained 50 names. 50. That is not a directory, that's a dinner party. There were no phone numbers listed because operators manually connected calls by name. Imagine calling someone and saying, yes, operator, please connect me to Harold, and trusting that Harold is the right Harold. Modern anxiety would never deal with that. February 21st reminds us that progress takes time. Sometimes 40 years of construction. Sometimes 10 months of trench warfare. Sometimes just enough ambition to print 50 names and say, let us see what happens. Endurance is not flashy, but it builds monuments. Now, February 22nd. This is big. Very big. Presidentially big. George Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732, at Pope's Creek Plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia, to Augustine and Mary Ball Washington. However, under the Julian calendar, in use at the time, he was actually born on February 11th, 1731. Calendar adjustments are fun. Not. Today, the site is preserved as the George Washington Birthplace National Monument. Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. First President of the United States. The only president unanimously elected. And notably, a man who voluntarily stepped down from power. Historically speaking, that's rare. Now, Westmoreland State Park. George Washington Birthplace is actually not too far from where I grew up. And I would really recommend anybody who can go visit. I've been there quite a few times. As a matter of fact, I mean, it's jam-packed full of history, not only colonial history, but prehistoric history. They actually discovered a full-size megalodon down on the waterfront, which is part of that George Washington's property. And you can just imagine, little George Washington walking around, being down on that beach and looking at the Potomac. And I actually stumbled across a fossil. It was a 2 million year old sea cow. And I had noticed that, there's tall clay cliffs there. And I had noticed there was kind of a hole, and I took a peek and I saw a fossil. So I went and got the park ranger like you're supposed to do. And about a month later, I checked back, and yeah, it was a 2 million year old sea cow, or as they called it, a dugong. So that's my claim to fame as a fossil finder. Not hunter, finder. But yeah, so I definitely recommend going down to George Washington's birthplace of Westmoreland County, Virginia. 1819. The Adams-Onís Treaty was signed by Secretary of State John Quincy Adams and Spanish Minister Luis de Onís, also known as the Transcontinental Treaty. It effectively drew the first definitive map of the United States from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. Spain ceded East and West Florida to the United States. The treaty established what became known as the stepladder boundary, zigzagging northwest to the 42nd parallel and then straight west to the Pacific. Spain gave up its claim to the Pacific Northwest. In exchange, the United States dropped its claim that Texas was part of the Louisiana Purchase. Diplomacy, where you trade swamps for paperwork and redraw continents with ink. 1980, the Miracle on Ice. On February 22nd, 1980, the United States men's ice hockey team, composed of amateur and collegiate players, defeated the defending gold medalist Soviet Union 4-3 at the Winter Olympic Games in Lake Placid, New York. This was the semifinal round. Team USA rallied in the third period. They would go on to defeat Finland 2 days later to win the gold medal. College players facing seasoned professionals in the middle of a Cold War. If you say you don't get chills from that, check your pulse. 1879, Frank Woolworth opened his first great 5-cent store. You guys remember Woolworths? At least some of the older people. Yeah, February 22nd, 1879. Frank Winfield Woolworth opened his first store in Bleecker Street in Utica, New York. It failed within months due to poor location and limited inventory. Entrepreneurship. Lesson number 1, location matters. His first truly successful store actually opened on June 21st, 1879, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He later returned to Utica in 1888 with a much larger and successful location. Fixed prices, no haggling, retail clarity, the beginning of what would become one of the largest retail chains in the world. February 22nd is about scale. A president who defined a nation, a treaty that reshaped a continent, a hockey game that transcended sport. Sometimes history whispers. Sometimes it skates past the Soviet defense and scores. February 23rd, Revolution, Siege, Printing Press, Vaccines, Light Day. 1836, Mexican General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna arrived in San Antonio with approximately 1,500 soldiers, beginning the 13-day siege of the Alamo. He raised a blood-red flag from San Fernando Cathedral, signaling no mercy. Commander William B. Travis responded by firing an 18-pound cannon from inside the fort. Between 150 and 250 defenders occupied the mission, including James Bowie and David Crockett. On March 6th, after a pre-dawn assault lasting approximately 90 minutes, Mexican forces breached the walls on the third attempt. Nearly all Texan defenders were killed. Remember the Alamo became a rallying cry. History is complicated. Memory is powerful. Slogans are rarely neutral. 1903. The United States and Cuba signed an agreement leasing Guantanamo Bay to the United States for use as a naval station. In perpetuity. Some agreements echo for generations. 1917. Demonstrations began in St. Petersburg, Russia, leading to the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and the end of the Russian Empire. Protests over bread shortages turned into revolution. Empires sometimes fall over something as simple and as powerful as hunger. And February 23, 1980, Eric Heiden completed his sweep of 5 gold medals in speed skating at Lake Placid. In 1968, Wilt Chamberlain became the first National Basketball Association player to score 25,000 career points. Consistency is not loud. It just keeps scoring. 1954. The first mass vaccinations using Dr. Jonas Salk's polio vaccine were administered to school children in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hope sometimes arrives in a syringe. And 1455 is traditionally associated with the printing of the Gutenberg Bible, marking the revolutionary spread of movable type printing in the West. Information multiplied. The original viral moment. February 23rd is about turning points. A siege that became a slogan. A revolution that ended an empire. A vaccine that reshaped public health. A printing press that changed knowledge forever. Sometimes history explodes. Sometimes it prints. Sometimes it inoculates. February 21st through the 23rd reminds us of this. Endurance builds monuments. Diplomacy redraws borders. Revolutions begin with bread. And sometimes college kids beat a superpower on ice. History clusters. It layers. It sometimes reminds us that behind every global headline is a human decision. And soon, we will tell the story of Charles Charlie Curo, as seen through the eyes of Mandy Curo, his granddaughter. It's one of those lives woven quietly through world events. So, stay precise, stay curious, and remember, every date carries weight. And every day, you create your own history. That one day, somebody will look back and say, hey, that's a really good story. This has been Dravin's Den. I hope you guys have a great week.